The Pokemon TCG has always been an outstanding example of what a trading card game should be. But here lately, I think I've seen more derision within the competitive community than I've ever seen before. And I agree completely with most of the complaints. The current metagame is shit. If you look at any of the current official event rankings, you'll see that the top 16s and top 8s at every event are just variants of the same 2 or 3 huge archetypes that center around these incredibly overpowered, incredibly expensive cards. This is a problem that pops up over the years, time and time again, across all trading card games. However, we live in a time where you don't have to play your card games in person anymore. There are great digital services that allow you to do so. Those of you that have played at official events know exactly where I'm coming from with this. The Masters division for Pokemon is 15 and up. So as a 15-year-old in high school, I was having to play against these sweaty 40-year-old dudes that are yelling at me about how gimmicky my deck is. But with the Pokemon trading card game online, you can just play from the comfort of your own home, open packs, and enjoy the game at your leisure. PTCGO has an amazing interface. All of the gameplay is super smooth. All the mechanics work so well on here. Matchmaking is super fast because there's a huge player base on here. The cards look incredible within the game, and it gets regular updates. The day that a new set launches, all of those cards are instantly put into the game and are made available. And it can be a really enjoyable experience just to browse through your collection and look at all of the cards you've accumulated. The deck building is very simple and fluid, and there's multiple game modes for however you want to play. Because I don't want to spend a lot of money on packs or invest that amount of time into grinding through packs to get cards, I usually just buy the theme decks with the coins I do have and just play the theme deck mode. It's even 100% free to download and play. However, the big problem with it is that it's just a giant commercial for the TCG that makes you want to go out and buy the physical cards. That way you can get the code cards and get the digital packs instead of having to grind through these tournaments and things to accrue coins to do so. However, as I mentioned earlier, the current metagame is so stagnant, and it has been for the entirety of the whole Sun and Moon block. Some would argue even before that. So if you're not interested in playing the current standard format or expanded format, then PTCGO doesn't have anything to offer. Another trend that I've really noticed lately within the community is this increased interest in older formats. I see a lot of people really wanting to revisit the base set era, all the way up through the Neo era. Even people were talking about Skyridge and Aquapolis again. A lot of longtime dedicated players have nostalgia and really great memories of those formats and would like to go back and play within them, but the Pokemon trading card game doesn't really have an option for that unless you want to set up your own physical events. Using TCG1 is an option, but the interface isn't nearly as great as the trading card game online is. And the Pokemon Company isn't about to add older sets and formats to their current online service because there's no money to be made from people buying products from 20 years ago. One option is to play the Pokemon trading card game on the Game Boy Color. It is available in the eShop to get it on the 3DS. It has a very fun, loose story mode where you go from gym to gym, battling trainers, obtaining new cards to upgrade your deck with, and it's a great way to experience and use all the cards from base set, jungle, and fossil. And it is just a solo story that you can really beat in just a few hours. There's not a whole lot of replay value other than just building new decks and trying them out. Plus, you're really only getting to experience those 3 sets, and the interface is a bit clunky because it was on the Game Boy Color. But this was a beloved game. People still play it to this day. I still get comments about it on my own videos. But for the West, at least, this was the only trading card game we got until the online service that is arguably not even really a complete game in itself. For what I consider a huge step in the right direction for trading card games in a digital format, let's jump ahead to the year 2010. The release of Magic the Gathering Duels of the Planeswalker was a huge deal back in 2010 because this was an entryway for a lot of people into Magic the Gathering. Because Magic has such a rich history and because its game mechanics are a little more complex and more competitive, it can be daunting knowing where to start. However, this game simplified all of the mechanics so well and explained them in such a great way. You were given these pre-constructed decks that incorporated cards throughout different sets in Magic. It's not like any of these decks were from the current standard format or anything, but those pre-constructed decks perfectly illustrated how all of the different color types interact, how the different types of cards with enchantments and artifacts and creatures interact with one another. It gives players a little taste of what the different aspects of Magic the Gathering are like, and a kind of a hint at what this larger history and library of cards can hold. You had the option to edit certain cards out of your deck, but you could never really build your own deck, and this was kind of frustrating in some ways. But in the overall scheme of things, because all of these decks were so balanced, online play was always fun. The more you knew about each deck, the more you knew how to play against it, and matches always felt fair because there weren't other players that just had better cards than you. Everyone was using the same types of deck, and you always felt like you had a chance to win. Instead of just copying and pasting deck lists from older formats, you got a mix of cards from multiple sets which could hit on nostalgia for longtime players and also encourage new players to go look at what the older formats held and what the new standard was. Which definitely worked out for Wizards of the Coast because this game had a huge player base. Sequels came out in 2012 and 13. I'm not sure beyond that. But also the sales of physical cards went up after these games released. Longtime players will also tell you that this is around the time that Magic cards started getting more expensive, which makes sense. With a larger player base, you're going to have more people seeking out cards that they first used and experienced within the digital format. Not only are you adding new players to the competitive scene, which are seeking out the new cards, you're also creating a higher collector's market of people that are seeking out the classic cards that are included in this game. So it stands to reason that if the Pokemon Company wanted to create a game like this, or at least include older formats in their current service, that they can still make money from it. When this game released, I had been out of the Magic the Gathering competitive scene for about 5 years. It really played to my nostalgia for the game and was just so well constructed and fun for the time that it renewed my interest in the game completely and made me start seeking out what the current cards were and what the competitive scene was like. There's such a huge potential for Pokemon to play on these same factors from so many demographics of people that enjoy the trading card game, and I don't think there's any larger shining example of that than Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist. It's a dedicated game just for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, including a story mode that lets you play iconic decks from the past 20 years of this trading card game with characters from the anime. You can take the role of the antagonist or the protagonist in each of these matches and progress through the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically. Aside from that, there's online matchmaking where you can battle with your own constructed decks or with pre-constructed decks. In August, Link Evolution is going to release exclusively on the Switch, and it includes over 9,000 individual cards to choose from to construct these decks from. Much like the Game Boy Pokemon TCG game, you can grind through different matches to get packs, but at a fun, balanced pace. It's not like it's microtransactions because you're only paying the flat price of $40. To be fair, the original console releases did have almost $100 in DLC, but the $40 Switch version includes all of that DLC. Plus, buying the physical copy of this game gets you 3 exclusive Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, which should further incentivize collectors. And I really do hope that this Switch version sells like bonkers because everything about this game screams what I've always wanted from the Pokemon trading card game online service, which would also work as a fucking amazing dedicated console solo game. So let me get to the point of this video, which is how do you construct the ideal Pokemon trading card game product that will not only make a ton of money, but also draw more people's interest into the property while also playing off of nostalgia and guiding people into the modern TCG, appealing to all generations of fans that have played the TCG throughout the years, while widening the scope of what people know and understand about the game. So here we go. Of course, it's gonna have to have a price tag on it, or else the Pokemon Company's not gonna want to do it. So let's say $20 to $30 for a DLC expansion to the Pokemon trading card game online, which adds all printed cards across all sets, including promo cards, even those that have been previously unreleased outside of Japan. A new story mode that includes pre-constructed decks that lets you play through all the generations and all the multiple formats that the TCG has seen. It could even be tied to anime characters or characters from the mainline games to draw in a wider audience. With all sets now involved, you would need to add new game formats that let you customize online matchmaking to choose which sets you would like to include, allowing players to create specific sub-communities of people that want to play within certain formats with certain parameters, allowing players to experience the TCG in their own way without being bound by the restrictions of the current standard format. And because I love physical media too, give the game a physical release for the Switch and include some sweet promos. Include some of those cards that never made their way outside of Japan. You're going to catch the attention of collectors. You're going to get the attention of hardcore Pokemon fans. You're going to get the attention of anyone that's played the TCG and has nostalgia for it. And honestly, it's not that big of an ask because most of the resources needed to create a game like this already exist in one form or another. In conclusion, just do it and you can have my money. This is a rant that I've been wanting to get out for a while now, so if you're still with me, thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear down in the comments what people think about my idea for this ultimate trading card game, and I would love to hear your ideas as well. I created this channel with the purpose to create more content about the older classic formats of the Pokemon TCG, and so my greatest hope is that a product like this is released in the future and all of this information can go to greater use for people constructing decks within a medium that makes it much easier than obtaining all of the physical cards and finding a community of people to play with that have the same interests as you. But that's all for now. Stay tuned for more Pokemon content, including the occasional rant, and until next video, bye.